So a few days ago, I made a video grading each team's offseason, and somebody commented, "New fan to hockey, these videos help." And it really got me thinking, well, if we have all these new fans to hockey, how do they know how the game even works? Every year we get brand new fans of hockey and the NHL, and there's never a video series where it shows all the rules, the positions, the terms, all that good stuff. So if you're a brand new hockey fan, you're interested about learning more about the game, well, you've come to the right place. Here is the start of my video series, Hockey 101, the guide to hockey. So before we begin, this video is more or less going to be about watching hockey and learning some of the basic terms, not how to play it. We're not going to show any of the equipment or anything like that. We'll make a different video talking about how to play hockey. So starting off here, looking at some of the things we're going to talk about today, we're going to look at the objective, the positions / the lines, the rink overall, the basic rules, and the basic terms. So we'll start off here with the objective. Well, it's pretty much self-explanatory. You got to put the puck inside of the net. Whoever shoots the puck in the net the most times wins the hockey game. If you're an outsider to hockey and you might actually think that the objective is to beat up as many players as possible, well, unfortunately, fighting is not the objective here. Although it is nice, it is not the objective. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention during my initial recording of this video is actually how long a game is. Now, this can differ depending on what type of level of hockey we are talking about here, but typically in a pro game, there are 3 20-minute periods with intermissions in between all of them, and then if there's a need for overtime, there is a 5-minute 3-on-3 overtime, and then a shootout. Whether it's a slap shot, a wrist shot, or whatever this is, no matter what, if you can put the puck in the net the most times possible, you'll win the game. Moving on here now to the positions, there is a total of 6 different positions, starting off here with the center. The center is usually always where the puck is. They take the faceoffs, usually the most reliable player on the team. Usually. The center is always taking faceoffs, whether it's center ice, the faceoff dots in the neutral zone, or the dots in the offensive or defensive zones. As I said, the center is usually the best player on the team. They can kind of do everything out there on the ice. They're in charge to do more or less everything, and they can either have really offensive upside, or they could be a solid defensive type forward. Moving on to the wingers, there are 2 types of wingers, whether it's the left or the right wing. They receive the puck from the center typically, and they cover their side of the rink most of the time. As I said, the wings usually receive the puck from the center and usually get the shots on net, or they're passing it to the center and the center will get the shots on net. Either way, the winger and the center rely on each other for offensive upside. Moving on to your offensive player types. Now, you have the grinder, who's usually known for his checking and his hard work ethic rather than his scoring. You have the playmaker, who can kind of do everything. He can pass, he can score, he can kind of do all that. You have the sniper, who usually takes shots from either of the playmakers. And then you have the 2-way forward who can play both offensively and both defensively. You also have the power forward, who usually is known for either his checking or his scoring. He kind of brings both the physical and the offensive end of the game. And then lastly, you have the enforcer, who's the fighter. Moving on here to the defenseman. There's usually 2 types of defenders, the left defenseman and the right defenseman, and they prevent the other team from scoring through any means necessary. The defensemen are typically in their own zone for the most of the time, defending the goaltender from any goals or any chances whatsoever. If there's a shot that comes on net, they will most likely attempt to block it. Which, if you're one of those fans who watches those videos of players taking block shots multiple at a time and still playing solid out there on the ice, usually that's the defenseman. Some of the defensive playing types, they're kind of self-explanatory. The offensive defenseman who plays mostly offense and has an offensive side to his game. You have the defensive defenseman who usually defends his net most of the time. And then you have the 2-way defenseman who can do both. And last but not least, you have the goaltender, who is pretty self-explanatory if you've watched any other sport. He prevents the puck from entering their team's net. He's the last effort. He is the last person to stop the puck before it goes into the net. Goaltending is typically the hardest position to play because you are out there all 60 plus minutes in the game and you are stopping pucks in and out. Moving on to some of the goaltender playing types, the hybrid relies on his quick reflexes and his quick movement to stop pucks and usually uses some of the butterfly techniques, but isn't actually the butterfly. The butterfly will cover the low parts of the net for the most part and cover it down there, and the stand-up Well, he just covers the high parts of the net. Typically, in a pro game, you will have 18 skaters and 2 goaltenders. Starting off here with 4 full lines of offensive, 1 center, 2 wingers, and then on the defensive side, you have 3 pairings of 2 defensemen, and then on the goaltending, you have a starter and a backup. Most of the time. Now that really can differ on what kind of league we're talking about here, but usually in pro leagues like the NHL, the AHL, the ECHL, all those leagues, there's typically 18 skaters and 2 goalies. But in the scenario where 2 goaltenders get injured, there is an option of an emergency backup. Usually it's like a Zamboni driver or somebody who qualifies as an e-bug. Moving on here to the actual rink itself. Take a look at this graph here. I have some of the places labeled. You have the red line in the direct middle, the blue line on each of the sides, you have the goal line on each side of the rink, you have 2 nets labeled, and then you have face-off dots and face-off circles. The 4 circles on your screen are usually the face-off circles. Whether a goalie makes a save on the left end, they'll go face-off on the left face-off circle. If a goalie makes a save on the right circle, they'll go face-off on the right circle. That can change though. In the neutral zone, you will see 4 dots highlighted. Those are the neutral zone face-off dots. Typically when there's an offside or some type of fight or something like that, usually that's where the face-offs are. There is also a face-off circle in the direct middle of the ice, and that's usually where a face-off takes place at the beginning of the period, after a goal, or some type of delay. Moving on to how the lines work, the red line is in the direct middle of the ice and divides the zones from each other. The blue lines divide the neutral zone from the defensive zone and the offensive zone. If a player crosses the offensive zone before the puck does, that is called an offsides. We'll get into the rules in a little bit though. I did my best explaining that. If you have any questions down in the comments below, I will be answering all the questions you guys have, so feel free to leave one. But anyways, now moving on to the rules, there's a couple of them, and I didn't even mention all of them actually. Starting off here with offsides, I discussed how the blue lines will divide the offensive zone, the neutral zone, and the defensive zone. If a player crosses into one of the offensive or defensive zones without the puck being crossed first, it's called an offsides. Usually it's not a penalty though. You also have an icing where if a player throws the puck out of their own zone and doesn't get past the red line before doing so, and the defenseman beat them to it, it's called an icing. After an icing is called, a face-off will be redirected in the defensive zone where the icing initially occurred. You have tripping, which is pretty self-explanatory. Whether you dive and knock over a player or you trip them with your stick, you will get a 2-minute minor. You also have a high sticking, where if you high stick the player above their helmet, that's a 2-minute minor. If there is blood on the play, though, that is actually a 4-minute. Now, boarding is complicated because it depends on the severity of the board. Whether I've seen some plays where there's no call at all on some boards, and I've seen plays where it's a 5-minute major and a misconduct. Boarding can actually be really dangerous, though, and the National Hockey League has filed out some suspensions this season to really kind of cut down on those types of plays. Interference can be used in 2 different ways. You have player interference and you have goaltender interference. Interference is defined as when a player impedes the progress of an opponent, which is usually a non-puck carrier, with no effort to play the puck, maintain normal foot speed, or maintain an established skating lane. Goaltender interference happens where a player usually runs into the goaltender and then gets a penalty whether a goal happens or not. That isn't as common though. Goaltender interference is usually common when a goal occurs, when a player runs in or bumps into a goaltender and it causes the goalie to lose his position or lose his stance and the player scores. Goalie interference has been criticized the past couple of years. It depends on the ref who is making a really good call or a really stupid call, which is typically why you hear Next up, you have delay of game, which is mostly when you flip the puck over the boards and it doesn't touch the glass whatsoever. You're either trying to stop an offensive chance or you kind of just do it by plain accident. It doesn't matter. You'll get a 2-minute minor. And then obviously there is fighting as well. The fighting rules have changed significantly over the past couple of years, whether you will get a 5-minute major or you'll just get a misconduct. And lastly, we're going to talk about some of the basic terms now. So some of these terms are used in other sports as well. So they're not all going to be actually specifically hockey. Some of them are used in other sports as well. Starting off here with bar down is usually when you shoot the puck, it hits the crossbar end of the net and goes straight down. That is called a bar down. A sweep is where you sweep a team 4-0 in a playoff series. That's typically used in other sports as well. You also have a dynasty, which is where you either win 3 cups in 4 years or 3 straight cups. That is classified a dynasty. A twig is usually another word for a stick, and a clapper is just a slap shot. That'll wrap it up for our first episode of Hockey 101, the basics. If you enjoyed this video, but you have some questions, be sure to leave a comment down below. I will be answering all the questions you guys give me. I certainly do appreciate them. Anyways, hopefully this helps you enjoy the sport of hockey. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe down below if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next video.